Welcome to episode 29 of the Courageous Coach podcast, the podcast where we pull back the curtain on what it really takes to be courageous with your clients, your business, and your life. I'm your host, Melissa Haig. In this episode, we're going to explore embodiment, what it means, and why it's crucial in fostering courageous coaching and developing grounded confidence. I'm joined by Glyn in this episode to explore this concept. We chat about the importance of connecting with our body and the wisdom it holds, emphasising that courageous coaching involves being aware of both our mind and our body. The conversation delves into the journey of integrating embodiment into coaching practices, recognising early warning signals from the body, and the significance of reflective practice. We also explore the challenges coaches face in balancing their own experiences with those of their clients, and the necessity of staying present and connected during coaching sessions. So, are you ready? Let's dive in. So welcome to the Courageous Coach podcast. And for today's episode, I'm joined by Glyn. It's wonderful to have you here, Glyn. Thank you so much for agreeing to come along and have a talk with me, a conversation with me about embodiment, and what that might look like, and what that might mean for us in terms of being courageous coaches, right? So I'm really looking forward to this conversation because, like all of my conversations on the podcast, I don't know where this is going to go. But I know, because Glyn and I have had some conversations together already, I know that we are both very curious individuals. So I'm just going to let my curiosity guide me in this conversation.
Awesome.
So Glyn, let's start by just asking you to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, thank you for inviting me on. I mean, I would just maybe before I even do that, a slight addition to what you said. Let's look at what this looks like and feels like, let's say, given that we're talking embodiment. That feels
Lovely.
Important.
Yeah.
So a little bit about me. Yeah, I'm a coach, obviously. I probably wouldn't be here. But also do facilitation, some organisation development, consultancy, mediation. So it's things around conversation, I guess. How I got here was a couple of career changes, the last one being a diplomat and working overseas for many years. That then led to, I suppose, my first introduction to embodiment, which was I got sick. My body kind of gave up on me in various ways. And then I was like, okay, where do I want to take that next? How do I want to support people in their experiences of work and life? And I just started exploring from there. And along that journey, I bumped into what might be called embodiment. And maybe we can explore that a little bit more.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you. And so, all right, let's just go there first of all then, right?
Yeah.
What the heck do we mean? What might you mean? What does it mean to you, this word embodiment, right?
Yeah.
What is it? What is it for you?
I was hoping you were going to answer that. I mean, imagine there are different ideas around it, and it's used with a sort of, I think, with a big E and a small e in various different ways. I think for me, it was just an initial awareness. I think partly through that becoming sick and what that did in me, but then how I started to explore after that, just the idea that I'd spent an awful lot of time in my head, and everything was about thinking. And I'm always reminded of it now when you ask that question to people, how do you feel? And the answer is, well, I think I feel. Right. And I was bad at that, and I still do that sometimes as well. So just being aware, actually, there's more going on in me than just what's going on in my head. And in fact, even in my head, it's not just thinking. There's sensation, there's movement, there's other stuff going on. What's that trying to tell me? Right? What's it trying to signal to me? Because ultimately, I probably would not have got as sick as I did if I'd been paying attention to what my body had been trying to tell me for many years before that.
Okay.
So first he got curious about that. So it's just something about the aliveness of the body and the fact that there is wisdom and information in that, I think. Then as I started to learn about it, I think maybe getting a bit more coachy, technical about it, it's how does that show up in your body? So then starting to learn, okay, our experiences, our history, what we believe in, how we're feeling, what's important to us, all of these things literally show up in the shape of our body and
Mm.
how we hold ourselves and the presence that we have. And most of the time, it's unconscious. So therefore, we're just showing up with all our stuff showing, but we don't think it's showing.
Yeah.
So then getting interested in, okay, if I can start to explore that a bit more for myself and with others, so we can have a bit more, well, I don't want to say control, but just a bit more choice
Mm.
in, right, okay, I feel what's going on here. Something's trying to tell me something. What do I want to do with that?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm really struck by this piece because I came to um I mean, embodiment continues as I know it does for you, but embodiment continues to be my work, right? Being connected to everything that's happening below my neck. That's how I describe it, right? Because like you, I spent all of my life up until only a few years ago in my head, and then somebody somewhere said something about embodiment or being connected to your body. And then of course I, as you know, did the work with Brene, and one of the things that she talks about is that we have to be connected to ourselves, we have to be embodied. And I was like, oh my goodness, there's that word again. What's this about? um the thing that I think is the most curious for me is, particularly in terms of coaching, is that there's all this data and information. Again, I'm going to say that the below the neck that we
Hmm.
feel,
Hmm.
and it's really rich data and
Yeah.
information. And that data and information may be of use to my client. And so I was like, oh, brilliant, excellent. It's another tool. It's another thing that I can learn
Yeah.
in order to be able to help my clients, right? I was like, brilliant. Okay, where do I go to learn these tools then of embodiment, right? And then, realized very quickly that it's not another tool or a technique even. This is about connection to self. And that's really for me where the hard work began. And so how has your journey with
Mm.
embodiment, your development with embodiment, how has that kind of shaped you,
Mm.
changed you, maybe?
Yeah. I mean, that brings up a whole bunch of stuff, and I'll see if I can sort of order them in some way.
Mm,
But I think the first thing that came to me is, it's a distinction I make between knowledge and embodied wisdom, right? So
okay.
you can learn a tool, you can learn a model, you can learn a technique, all of
Mm,
those things.
mm,
But for me, when I'm working with through the body, however you want to call it, it's just sort of like something I kind of feel a sense of.
mm,
Now, then I think the tools, etc., can be useful access points, and they can
mm,
provide some structure around something. And then I think often for a client who is not familiar with this way of working, having something they can get their head around a little bit in
mm,
order to start that work is really important. But ultimately, it's more a way of being,
mm.
which is why when you then ask, what is it and how do you do it, and I don't know, I have a
Yeah,
body. I
yeah.
occasionally get the head out of the way. Mm,
Mm,
I don't know, right? So how did I get here? I'm not various ways, I suppose. I mean, I think it was my experience over many years of not particularly great workplaces, or not great for me,
okay.
right? And just that dominance of the head that's
Mm,
been taught into us all. And then everything that we see online and everything that's talked about is about the qualifications and what's on paper and what knowledge do you know and what's your expertise, and everything is up here, right?
yeah.
And it's exhausting, right? Because then through my experiences of it over time, starting to realize that, well, actually, and learning that actually the body is generally quite a bit ahead of the head,
Mm.
right? All the head is doing is interpreting what's going on in the body.
Yeah.
But we've given this head thing such power that it knows best and it knows everything. Therefore,
Mm.
we believe the story of the head rather than trusting what the body's trying to say.
Yeah.
And I think it's, part of that being with it is starting to sense that sort of the body can't lie, but your
Mm.
head can,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
But the body can only kind of tell you a truth, but it will only hint at a truth. Maybe it doesn't come up with the full narrative, but it will
Mm.
sort of it can't mislead you in a
Mm.
sense. It's the interpretation that can mislead you. So I think just starting to experience that for myself, starting to realize that, starting to then see how that showed up in other clients, coming from that initial point of, places I've worked and my experiences out in the world, so much of it comes from up here. And
Yeah.
so much of this is valued, and we are just missing so much of the rest.
Mm.
So, and then I suppose, what's the structure of that? How did I move through that over time? So it started with illness, a little bit of, then there was sort of yoga and meditation stuff that came in initially. Then actually a little bit of more formal embodied learning, training around
Yeah.
coaching from various angles. It brings in neuroscience, it brings in aspects of martial arts in different ways, different
Mm.
ways of looking at the body. And again, I'm not an expert in any of these things. It was just sort of picking up bits and making the shape of it. And then more recently, my body decided to go on the next bit and started giving me these sort of energy signals that move
Mm.
through my body. So then I started exploring that through um, other sort of wisdom traditions. So non-Western, non-psychological, non-head based,
Yeah.
closer to nature, that sort of thing.
Mm.
So it's just had this progression of something new's coming up in me, something I still don't understand in me. So how
Mm.
can I experience it differently to try and I hesitate to say make some sense of it because then we're back up here again. But
Yes.
to I suppose integrate it into myself in somehow so then it can be useful in the world.
Mm.
Yes.
Yeah. I love that idea of integrating it, right? Because I think one of the challenges that I kind of faced is that um, sort of trying to see the head and the body as separate,
Mm,
almost like I can take my head off and put it over there, and now just fully connect to the wisdom of my body, right? But the two things are kind of completely connected and integrated. But we've been trained and conditioned and all of those things you said, right, for our heads to be the primary thing, the important thing, the valued thing, and all of those things. And I one of the things sometimes find is that in that sort of meaning making is that,
mm,
oh, okay, just connect with your body for a moment. All right, I sense something happening here, and then it's like, what's that about? What does that mean? So even in that sort of scenario, my brain is there going, my thinking brain is going, right, okay, let's make sense of this.
yes.
And so there's something about the embodiment work for me that that isn't like an unexpected benefit of doing that work for me has been that it is stretching my capacity to sit with not knowing,
Yeah.
which I think is such an important thing for coaches, right? Because we sit with that discomfort and uncertainty all the time, and and our brains want to take over because they want to know and it wants certainty. So let me try and work this out.
Yeah.
So it's really helped me to let go of that. I need to know. Actually, oh, that's interesting. It's just interesting,
It
right?
is.
Yeah,
And again,
yeah.
I'd extend that a little bit. Absolutely around the uncertainty, the not knowing, but also just being with sensation and emotion,
Mm,
right? Because why have we ended up being so dominant in the head. How have we got there, or what's all that about? I don't know the full history of that by any means, but a big part of it is we don't pay attention to the signals that are going on down below.
Mm-hmm.
And another aspect of the work that I'm moving more and more into, which links more to my, I suppose, organisation work and conflict work, is around the role of what you might call trauma, but how does experience show up in us as
Okay.
well, right?
Mm.
And we don't want to experience the stuff that we consider to be unpleasant or not nice or bad, all those things. So it keeps getting shoved down
Mm-hmm.
into the body, right?
Mm-hmm.
The body just keeps storing it up, and then it starts to come out in weird stuff,
Yeah.
individually, collectively, etc., over time. So also our capacity to just be with, I'm feeling something.
Mm.
I don't need to know what it is. I don't
Mm.
even need to name it
Mm.
necessarily. In fact, often the naming the sensation, the experience of it, rather than trying to name what you think that means, or
Mm.
am I sad? Am I happy? Whatever. No, don't even go that far. Just,
Yeah.
I'm just having an experience in me. Something is moving.
Mm.
Something is alive.
Mm.
That aliveness it's kind of provoking me into taking a look, paying attention to it, because then it can breathe, and then it can integrate. It can do what it wants to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things that I talk a lot about in kind of the courageous coach work
Mm.
is around this idea that our bodies are our early warning indicators, and particularly when we're talking about emotion. And we will often, our bodies know that we are experiencing an emotion, if you like, before we've named it,
Mhm.
recognized it, analyzed it, or whatever in our heads. And so there's something for me about, when we're when we're about to do something brave, um, lots of things will come up usually in our heads to say, don't do that. It's not safe. Let's armor up, protect myself, don't do that. And as you said, suppress that emotion, push it down, or maybe a sensation, ignore it, don't pay attention to it, stay safe. But that tingling, I mean, I'm doing tingling, could be anything, right? But that sort of early warning indicator is actually so important for us because it allows us to sit with, as you say, but to notice it and say, okay, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm not going to do that I think I'm going to do. I'm not going to not be brave. Or so those early warning indicators are so important
Yeah,
before we even get to, oh, that's anger, or that's
yeah,
rage, or that's grief, or whatever the label is, right? Before we even get to that. And so that gets me really curious about how we begin to notice the different signals that our bodies are
hmm,
giving us, right? Okay, that's a tingling in my fingers, that's a heat in my legs, because there's so much granularity in our bodies. And so I'm really curious about that, how you kind of, because like initially, yes, let's sit with it, but also begin to notice differences. So that early warning indicator becomes fine tuned. I think that's what I'm trying to say.
yeah. Okay, let me see what I can go with that.
I just throw stuff at you
Yeah,
and you
that's fine. Just
and
catching it up.
run with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Just run with it.
No, and I'm totally with you on the early warning signals, right?
Mm,
In various ways, because I said earlier, that yes, the body is trying to tell us something. The head will then just interpret that and start turning it into a story. And because of the way our brains work, it will generally try and turn it into a story that we already recognize because it likes shortcuts, right? So
yes.
it will start making links which may or may not be there, which will then create a story of fear or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Similarly, our body is always reading the room for safety. Well,
Mm,
a bit more than safety sometimes, but let's go with safety for now.
yeah.
Right? So therefore, it's also reading the people we're interacting with really quickly,
Okay.
way ahead of our brains. Right.
Mm,
So it will start giving us those signals. So what then that goes back to what I said earlier. It provides an opportunity for choice. Right. I'm starting to notice uh, that tingling's happening,
Mm.
as I can start to build up that discernment, so I recognize that tingling comes up when I'm feeling a bit unsafe in relation to people in positions of authority, for example, right?
Yeah.
Okay, what do I normally do when that happens, which I've been doing for the last 30 years, which is unconscious, is I run away and hide, or I get angry and start shouting at people, or whatever it is. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead, do I want to do this differently? Because for me, the choice is always about how do I stay in connection,
Mm.
right? Because ultimately, the safety is in the connection.
Mm.
If you break the connection, the chance of getting the safety you want are even slimmer, right?
Gone. Yeah.
So even if you don't feel safe or don't like the person or whatever it might be, initially in the body, right, what choice can I make to try and maintain or create connection here?
Mm.
Now, and it's 50-50, it's not all on us, but
Mm-hmm.
at least you're creating a different potential in that.
Yeah.
So then back to your question, which I think was around, how do you start to
Get
differentiate?
granular.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think there's a step before that,
Okay.
which is often the case, which is, do you even know you feel anything? So before you even start to get granular with it, or is it this or that? It's like, is there anything?
Mm.
Right?
Yeah.
Then, so, and this is the essence of it. Really, it's down to practice.
Mm.
So,
Mm.
what is the sort of practice that works for this individual? Because it's going to be different for everybody.
Yeah.
That they can spend a few minutes in each day
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
just start to notice, I'm feeling something, and often the access point that it doesn't have to be an internal early warning signal. It's just, oh, I'm sat on a chair. Oh, look, there's contact with the backs of my legs. That feels like
Mm.
something. There's an external and an internal feel to that.
Mm.
Then you can start to build that up into okay, there's movement in the body. And there's a great access point for that, which is just the breath, right?
Yes.
There's the passage of breath, there's the rising and falling of the chest. It brings movement, it brings sensation. So you don't
Mm.
even have to start with the sort of self-generated, more emotional, connected stuff. Right?
Yeah.
Then the other part of the granularity and the discernment is not just the sensation for me; it's also the language because they're connected. Right?
Okay.
So we also, most of us, have a pretty limited emotional vocabulary. Right?
Yep.
We put a whole bunch of stuff in several large buckets. Right? So let's take angry, for example. Right?
Yep.
It could be frustrated. It could be disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
Could be 100 other things. Right.
Yep.
So alongside the starting to notice the sensation, then starting to notice, oh, actually, where is that sensation? Because sometimes we sort of have a sense that it's all over us to an extent, but it's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, actually, that's kind of down my left side more. Right?
Mm.
And okay, now that's a bit warmer here than it is here. So he's slowly bringing it down. And at the same time, okay, what I've said is angry before. No, maybe it's not angry. Maybe it's slightly to the left of angry. Well, then maybe it's slightly to the left of that. And just starting to really get a sense of the subtleties of
Yeah.
both sensation and language.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we talk about emotional literacy a lot, right? That whole kind of, most of us can name three emotions: mad, sad, and glad. And there's a whole world and wealth of them out there.
Yeah.
And I think that when I talk about expanding your emotional literacy, again, we get to the, okay, well, how many words can I learn
Mm,
in order to, how many words can I put into my dictionary in my head,
yeah.
and actually for me, that granularity of sensation is really where I've started to notice the difference between, okay, I would say, or I would think I am angry,
Yeah.
but actually my body is, when I take the time to slow down and check in, is actually kind of saying, this is disappointment, this
Yeah.
is this is disappointment, this isn't anger, right? Or so I love that idea of that granularity piece, particularly around linking or using the wisdom, the information in your body to be really much more literate emotionally, right? Because I think that's super important. um And so I'm kind of one of the questions I get asked a lot, and I've come across this with my own clients as
Mm.
well. So I'm curious about your kind of client experience because um, one of the things that I will sometimes do, not with all clients and not just because, but if something shows up in my body, I sent, a sensation, I will offer it to my client, right? And I think what's super important is that what I've had to learn to do though is to not then put my meaning on it, my interpretation. So I'm sensing a tightening in my stomach. That's it.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. That's not the point, right?
Yeah.
And so I find that can be really helpful for clients. But I'm always aware that some clients I work, and I'm guessing this is the same for every coach, right? Some clients I work with are pretty well connected to their bodies, pretty well, and they can kind of think, they can think in that way. No. They can, you know what I'm saying. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying. But then, of course, I have worked with clients where there's kind of a resistance to that. And I'm always curious about that resistance. I just wonder what your experience is, because this is clearly, I get the sense this is part of who you are, right? This is Glyn. This is how you show up in the world. So how does that kind of translate into client work for you?
I mean, it's a bit of a spectrum, I guess,
Mm,
because yeah, every client's different, the contexts are different. So I'll always be working with the body in some way or other.
mm,
With most clients, that does involve I deliberately start with a grounding in the body. The first few minutes before we even get into talking about anything.
yeah.
But that doesn't work for everybody. So some people I don't do that with as well,
Mm,
or I've tried it, but it doesn't quite fit for them or whatever.
mm,
Um, so then, yeah, it will be through the course of a conversation, I might be picking up something or noticing something in their shape or whatever.
mm-hmm.
And for me, it's really about the language of that sort of appropriate to that person. Because if you go off, a bit too weird and woo woo with it, then they'll be like, "Well, what the hell are you talking about?" and walk out of the room, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas if you can just do it in a very sort of matter of fact way, in those cases, just
Mm,
like I noticed just now you did this,
yeah.
and I always offer it may or may not mean anything,
Yeah.
And like you, I'm like I'm noticing right now this is coming up for me. I will sometimes offer an interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be like, and to me that feels like
Yeah.
jealousy or hunger or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
With always the offer is, and that may not mean anything to you, but it's just
Mm,
like, but it's often a sort of, if I drop that in, it can then bring attention to the client that, oh yeah, there is something there at the
yeah.
moment. Or they might go, no, it's not there. I say, fine, we'll move on, right? So it's because sometimes I can just be hungry,
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, it's really judging the moment. I try and bring it in, then with the clients that are really far more interested in it, then we'll get into, getting up and moving around and really exploring what's in the body and exploring imagery that goes with that. And there's a whole
Mm,
bunch of ways you can take it.
yeah,
But at a simplest level with all clients, there will be some degree of noticing what's in me, noticing what is in their shape, and maybe
yeah.
how that is shaping their voice as well.
Mhm. Mhm.
And the other bit, I suppose, is how it shows up. It's in that noticing what's in me. That's not just noticing, okay, what might I be reflecting that's in them, but it's also, okay, what's this bringing up in me?
Mm,
Right? And then
mm.
what do I need to do with that? Is that appropriate to bring to the conversation, or is that actually for me to deal with later, whatever?
Yeah.
And a part of that is how do I stay grounded and regulated myself
Mm,
so that I'm offering that space to the client? Because ultimately, we're back to safety and staying in relationship again. Right?
yeah.
So, how do
Yeah.
I keep myself open to connection so that whatever is coming up, whether we're talking about it, experiencing it in embodied language and experience, or just in good old fashioned head words,
Yeah.
doesn't matter. Because if I'm offering that to whoever I'm interacting with, they will be having an embodied experience, whether they have the language for it, whether they have the awareness of it.
Hmm.
It kind of doesn't matter. But what I do know, I mean, it's interesting, as I've been talking about this, I have one particular client in mind, right? Who, and I'm not going to name any names or anything, of
No.
course, but just I've been thinking through the journey with that client. And I know with them that there have been moments of, in what is quite a hard-nosed business conversation most of the time, and it's, I've got these things to look at and these things to do, and I've got this problem, and can we look at this? There have been moments of real vulnerability, or just stopping and going, oh, yeah. And I know that's because of what I'm offering in the safety of the space.
Yeah.
And we'd never go to the fluffiness of that language and talk about it in that way.
No.
I know there is, in that moment, a subtle shift in the conversation, which wouldn't happen
Mm.
if I was doing it all through this bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really struck by something, because I think that I mean, what you've just described in very practical terms there, in terms of what you're doing and how you're showing up in your coaching, that for me is one of the really key elements of courageous coaching, right? The
Mhm.
ability to share something of yourself. I'm noticing, I'm sensing, or whatever, to share that in a way that is it's offered. You're unattached to it. It's not about being right, all
Yeah,
of those things, but having the courage to offer that is absolutely a very vulnerable thing for a coach to do, right? So and I think because the reason I believe courage in coaching is so important is because with courage comes vulnerability, and it's such a human thing. Now we're into this connection piece, right? I connect with you because you're a fellow human being, not because you're my coach, right? Because not because of your job title. So how do we create that human connection? And I think that sharing of ourselves is a really important part of that. But something you said was really got me thinking, because one of the questions that I always get then is, yeah, I know, but this coach, particularly with new coaches, novice coaches, they'll say, yeah,
mm.
but I was told, trained, it's not about me, it's about them. And so
Mm.
how do I know if it's my stuff or their stuff, and whether I
Mm.
should and shouldn't? And because they're wrapped in the rules, right, that they've been told to follow. And you said something really interesting, which I think I'd love to delve into a bit more, is this idea of remaining grounded and present and connected to self and other, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, there are lots and lots of grounding exercises and ways to stay present. Totally get that. We could, go and get a book on it, I expect.
Mhm.
But I'm wondering, for you, what's your practice of grounding and remaining present with your clients when you're doing this work?
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to what I said earlier about practice, so that
Mm,
over time it becomes something you can access more quickly and easily, right?
yeah.
And then I was going to pick up on something I said earlier, actually, when we were talking about um, sitting with the uncertainty and sitting with the not knowing. Often the response to that, slightly frustratingly, can be, "Well, I haven't got time for that." Well, that's part of the problem, but I
Yeah.
appreciate you don't have time for that. So I just want to correct myself slightly on that. Is, it doesn't mean a lot of time. It just means giving
Mm-mm.
it a moment, right? And it's the same with the centering and the grounding.
Yeah.
Initially, if it's completely unfamiliar, yes, you need to give it a bit of dedicated time and space. But ultimately, it needs to be something you can access mid conversation without anybody else noticing that's what you're doing. Right? So you don't have to go off and meditate for 15 minutes. That also helps, but
Yes.
often not the time for that. So for me, it's as simple as feet on the ground,
Mm-hmm.
bum in the chair, back in the chair,
Mm-hmm.
breathing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm so glad you said that, because I'm like, I think that there's a um there's a misconception that this is more complex than it is.
Hmm.
Now I absolutely agree with the practice thing. This is not something you can just hope is going to switch on when you
Mm.
get into your coaching mode, right? This
Yeah.
is a lot. This is a way of being, not just working, right? But I have been the thing that has surprised me the most, I think, about kind of learning and embracing this is that it can be, like you say, a meditation exercise, a mindfulness thing. It can be, but it can also be I'm going to, before a coaching session, because I all of my work's online, is sit out in my garden for 5 minutes and just breathe.
Yeah.
Nothing else, just breathe. It's important for me to be outside. I've learned that. That's an important part of it for me. But yeah, just breathe. Like properly breathe. Right. And I say that because I'm an up here breather,
Hmm.
up in the top of my chest. And
Yeah.
then I wonder why I get breathy. So lovely, calming, deep breaths. It's calm and stillness for me, I think. So I'm so, because it's almost like I want people to know who are listening that this is not hours of time that, but you do have to practice. And not just when you're coaching or in the 5 minutes before you're coaching, right?
I mean, this is the thing with, I often talk to clients about this, they're having the same experiences. And
Mm,
I think it's all of the things you just mentioned, right? It's because there's the question of resourcing. So, what resources us? Okay, being outside, being in nature, bit of quiet time, whatever it is for us.
mm,
So, doing that. It's also then doing deliberate practice, which could be yoga, qigong, whatever it might be,
yeah.
or meditation practice, all of these things. Right? These all help build up the capacity for this,
Mm,
so that then in the moment, your
mm,
body has a memory of how it can step into that.
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then it's that idea of, right, the most important time to practice is when you don't need to. That's
Yeah.
when you've got time to practice. Because if it
Yeah.
comes to the crisis moment, when as coach or as client or in a business environment or whatever it is, if you're in that moment where you're starting to get up here, you're starting to get agitated, old patterns are starting to come through, that's not the time you're going to be practicing. That's the
No.
time you're going to be benefiting from your practice.
Mm, yeah.
So the feet on the floor, bum in the chair stuff is just, okay, that's just reminding me of the stuff I spend my time doing when I've got time to do it.
Yeah.
Then my body can remember what that looks like.
Mm,
I'd say the other bit is also, as I was thinking about it in the coaching moment, it's also just paying attention to the narratives as well, right? So it's what you were saying, is, am I being in service of myself? Is this about me or is this about them? It's just starting to notice that. And for me, it is a sort of physical sensation
mm,
of, if that's not the case, I'm going to be feeling more down in the belly, like a
okay.
nice stillness,
Mm-hmm.
or I'm going to be feeling really fizzy in my head. If I'm feeling
Mm,
fizzy in my head, it's probably more about me.
mhm. Yeah.
And then I'll be starting to notice, I'll be starting to get anxious about, oh, am I asking clever questions here? Am I helping this client the right way? All that stuff will start to come in.
Yeah.
Those are all the signs to me that uh, of the balance has switched. So again,
Nice.
how do I pull myself back to dropping the energy out of here,
Mm,
dropping that fizzing down? Okay, right,
mm,
that's where I need to be.
yeah. And of course that's making me think about our reflective practice as well now, because I'm thinking about the kind of perhaps slightly more head reflective practice. What went well in that session? What didn't go so well? What will you do differently next time? Right?
Mm.
I mean, the classic kind of
Hmm.
head reflective practice.
Yeah,
But that sense of, oh, okay, what was happening in my body when when that happened for me, when I noticed that, and in the fizziness you mentioned versus the, it's really kind of down in my belly and
yeah,
calm. And that, my sense is, I don't know if this is true for you or not, but my sense is that comes from your being able to reflect and note, oh, that's curious, there's a difference. What does that mean? What might that mean for my practice? I get all excited because I'm like, oh, that's when it's so powerful reflective practice, because now you have that granularity between Is it about my client or is it about me? I don't need, I don't need my brain to tell me that.
Mm,
My body will tell me that, right? I can trust my
yeah.
body. Mm.
And I think there's also something just in that reflective practice, the being able to do that while it's happening,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Because for me, if I'm reflecting afterwards, then there's a great chance that the head will do its work of creating a really good story around what actually happened there and
Mm.
what I understand about that. Whereas in the moment, it's just, okay, this is what's happening. Because then it's
Mm.
a choice again, right? Okay,
Mm.
I'm going back into old habits here. Is that serving the client I'm with right now?
Mm.
Or
Mm.
do I want to make a different choice?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it's just this sort of constant calibration in relation to the experience you're having
Hmm.
rather than, oh, here's what I thought about what I did in the last hour, and here's what I'm going to tell myself what I'm going to do differently next time, which, of course, by the time I get next time, I've probably forgotten that's what I'm going to do anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, 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 totally. And also the client, even if it's the same client, they're in a different space with a different topic. And so
Exactly.
it's, so yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, that kind of, I think I'm trying to like, I feel like that's kind of like the reflection in action bit rather than the reflection after action,
Mm.
right? And there's a
Yeah.
skill to that too, for sure, the ability to do that. Um, but yeah, there's so much. I think this is why for me, being connected to self, and that for me is what embodiment is, connection to my whole self, is such an important part of being courageous as a coach, because it feeds into all of the elements of what we need to do in order to be courageous, right? To be vulnerable, to live into our values, to trust ourselves, and not just up here, but to trust what our body is telling us as well, and what that might mean, what that might mean if we share it with the client. There's so many elements of this that are so important. And I think the thing that I've learned as well, and this is a trust thing, actually. I think this comes back to trust, because one of the things I think I'm doing is I'm learning to trust what I'm sensing in my body. Is I'm just learning to trust it,
Yeah.
right? And go with it, whatever that is. I'm going to go with it. And it's that bit has taken me quite a long time to get to kind of be able to trust it, and it's still a work in progress for sure. And one of the wonderful examples I had of this was a workshop I did ages ago, a little while ago now, with kind of like a masterclass on
Mm.
you working with the body and coaching, that kind of thing. When we were talking about or energy and things like that.
Yeah.
And I was, I was saying, well, I'm not really very playful. I'd love to be more playful, but I'm just not playful at all, really. Didn't, blah, blah, blah. I've got all this story, all this, I'm not playful. And I'm not this, and oh, but I am this, and all of that kind of stuff. And then the person, the individual who's running the workshop, they played some music, and they played some music that was playful,
Yes.
right? And before I could think, I don't know, this is playful music or whatever, or I should play because this is playful music,
Mm.
my body was moving.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, okay. So here I've got this story that I'm not playful. I can't be playful. It's not my thing. I'm a grown up. I'm serious. My body knows how to play, and it is ready to play. Right. And so I love this idea that the body knows if we can tune in and listen. And for me, it's about slowing down long enough to tune in and listen. There's just such wealth of wisdom in there, right? It's just, oh,
Really. I mean,
mm,
and if you look at it from uh, various other traditions, even just basics of something like acupuncture or qigong or something, right? It's all
yeah,
about the flow of energy through the body, right? And for me, it's the flow of life through the
yeah,
body, and life wants to flow through the body,
mm,
right? It doesn't
mm,
want to be blocked. It wants to keep moving. So that will come through in various forms of movement.
mm,
Now, they might be dancing, they might be big expressive movements, or it might just be an internal movement.
yeah,
But it's the head is really good for some reason at blocking that flow.
mm,
And then it creates the stories which create the shape of the body which block that flow as well. And then we're not being ourselves. I mean, we're being a version of ourselves, but we're not allowing that full life
Mm.
to flow through us, because that's all it wants to do.
Yeah. And that's what that then brings me back to presence and connection, because I'm like, to be in connection, we want that flow, right? From one to the other, not just us, right? It flows between us. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's the thing again. I mean, it's like it can't not flow between us in the same
Mm,
way that we can't not feel below the head,
mm,
right? It's
mm.
it's happening. It's whether we are paying attention to it and then
Yes.
and encouraging that, or whether we are thinking that's what's not happening, which therefore creates a disturbance in that flow.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, Okay, that's a super point, I think, to end on, because I'm watching the time and thinking, oh my goodness, Glyn, I could talk to you all day about this. And I already feel like there's another conversation that needs to happen around this idea of the shape, right?
Mhm.
I'm fascinated by this idea of the
Okay.
shape. And yeah, so there's
Yep.
there's a whole thing there, but I'm not going to go there today because we'll be here in 3 hours' time. But I've loved our conversation. Thank you for sharing practically what this is for you, right? Yeah, and I'm really hoping in a way that, you know, our listeners are kind of going, oh, okay, I'm sort of getting this a bit now, because it's so important and so powerful. I'm so excited by the thought of being able to really connect more for me in my own development with
Yeah.
this, because not just for coaching, just for my life,
Life.
right?
Exactly.
Just for my life. Yeah.
And I think that's what, maybe to also just help people listening with that a little bit more, just to, confess from my side, right? Talking about all this, I'm on and off the horse all the time,
Mm.
right? I mean, I have my old shapes, my old habits, these things that come up, these things that I trip over. My head still gets too busy. I don't allow myself to be grounded. I don't do the practice.
Yeah.
All this stuff still happens.
Yeah.
But I know that when I do practice it, or I do allow myself to experience it, life's a hell of a lot easier.
Yeah. 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 Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, because we're all human, imperfect, and messy. And none
Yeah.
of us have got it all sorted out, right?
Yeah.
None of us. Brilliant. Glyn, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Very
much.
enjoyable.
Take care. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Courageous Coach podcast. I hope it gave you something to reflect on, something to feel, and maybe even something to act on. If you've been nodding along or feeling that tug of recognition, you're not alone. These conversations are here to remind us that courage isn't about having it all figured out. It's about showing up, doing the inner work, and being willing to be seen, even when it feels uncomfortable. If developing your own courage, compassion, and grounded confidence is work you want to go deeper with, you're warmly invited to join me inside the Courageous Coach programme, opening again in 2026, with one cohort starting in March and the second in September. It's where we take everything we talk about here and turn it into practice, community, and real change. You can find all the details on my website, and I've shared the link in the show notes to make it easier for you. And if we're not already connected, come and find me on LinkedIn. Whether you've got questions about the programme, want to share what's resonated for you in this episode, or you just fancy a chat. If you've enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow or subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss what's coming next. And if you know another coach who might need a little courage boost, pass it on. Courage is contagious after all. Thanks again for listening. And until next time, stay curious, stay human, and keep choosing courage.